A warm welcome to News Now. I am Fidelia Agoncha. We begin in the Northeast, where the International Organization for Migration, IOM, says an upsurge in violent attacks has displaced 59,200 people in the last 3 months. The UN Migration Agency at a summit in Geneva warned that Northeast Nigeria displacement crisis could continue due to increased sophistication of attackers. The agency also says the armed extremists, notably Boko Haram militants, had contributed to a decade-long humanitarian crisis in Borno, Adamawa and Yobe State that had spilled over into the Lake Chad region. In 2018, 7.7 million people in Nigeria were in need of humanitarian assistance, and 1.7 million people were classified as food insecure between October and December, and that's according to the UN humanitarian wing. Well, the general elections is now less than 2 weeks away, and the head of ECOWAS Observer Mission to Nigeria and former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has met with INEC Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu at the INEC headquarters in Abuja. Sirleaf, who arrived Nigeria on Tuesday, promised to help ensure peaceful, free and fair elections in the country. She also says that her visit was to get more pieces of information as regards to Nigeria's coming election. The former Liberian president also said she would share in the findings of earlier missions and consult with those who had been on ground.
The purpose of my visit is to meet with the authorities, to meet with the chairman, his colleagues, the honorable commissioners, to meet with other of the authorities for the election process so that I understand even more than what I've read as a means of preparation to be a part of this process. I've had the opportunity to meet with the team from ECOWAS, to meet with the initial observation team that have already done an initial assessment, and I look forward to meeting others, particularly the party leaders, so that I can leave here ready to return with more knowledge when I come back with the full team sometime next week.
I want to assure you that as we approach the 2019 general elections, the Commission is not unaware that the eyes of the world are on Nigeria and on our elections. This Commission will not fail Nigerians, will not fail the sub-region, and will not fail the world. We are going to prove that what happened in 2015 was simply not a fluke, and that 2019 is also going to be yet another landmark in our democratic process. We look forward to the report of your committee, of your mission, and the recommendations that will arise from your observation of the process, because your recommendations will be very critical for us in forging ahead, in reviewing, reforming our processes and procedures so that elections keep getting better.
While ahead of the presidential and National Assembly elections, there has been a shake-up in the Independent National Electoral Commission. INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner for Akwa Ibom, Mike Igini, has been redeployed to Bayelsa State and has been subsequently sworn in as the Resident Electoral Commissioner for the state. At his new post, he will be exercising supervisory control over personnel, resources, as well as the legal and administrative processes in the state. INEC has also reiterated its commitment to a peaceful election. Still on the forthcoming elections, the Center for Values in Leadership, CVL, has held its 16th annual lecture and International Leadership Symposium in Lagos. This year's edition reflects on the topic of democracy and the challenges of governance in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Oyin Adekunle has the rest of the story.
In the last few decades, democracy in Africa has been showing great signs of advancement. After gaining independence from European powers, over 20 sub-Saharan African countries can now boast of operating a democratic government. This symposium exploring the theme, "Is Democracy Making Life Better in Africa?" could not have come at a better time than 10 days to Nigeria's general election. Former Head of State General Yakubu Gowon begins his speech by emphasizing the fact that democracy has been of immense benefit to Africa and cannot grow without the contributions of a good civil service.
I accidentally became head of state by virtue of the powers considered to issue forth from the barrel of the gun, which is very undemocratic. Democracy cannot be strengthened in the absence of enduring structures like the judiciary, the legislative, the public service, among others. A good civil service is one that is totally committed to the government of the day, regardless of the political party in power or their political belief.
One of the keynote speakers at the event is the President of Liberia, who is represented by the country's Minister of Information, Cultural Affairs and Tourism, Eugene Nagbe. He maintains that democracy remains the best form of government and stresses the importance of press freedom in a democratic government.
With the dawn of the new dispensation of democracy in my country, we are beginning to see a paradigm shift. Laws which are regarded as anti-democratic are being reformed or in some instances completely scrapped off the books. Among the first legislation that President Williams submitted to the Liberian legislature when he took office was a bill to decriminalize speech offenses. Journalism and democracy are two names for the same thing. In fact, a free and unfettered press is an indispensable requirement for democracy. This is why we must ensure that the press itself is not used as instruments for the furtherance of selfish and parochial political interests at the expense of the greater good of the society as a whole.
In his own address, Bishop Matthew Kuka says good governance is a continuous journey that must be undertaken with patience and a huge sense of responsibility.
So for me, the greatest challenge for us is how do we manage sometimes what political scientists in the 60s talked about, rising expectations. Sometimes we expect life to change, and like again the lady said, it is not something that is going to happen Deus ex machina. We have to work on it. Before democracy, of course, let's not forget, we had autocracy, we had aristocracy, we had oligarchy, we had plutocracy, we had all kinds of systems of government. And of course, we had divine right of kings. And today, as you can see, in this country, I mean, it's troubling how the spiral of feudalism is rising and rising and rising pari passu with the claims of democracy. And all the principles of democracy, because it's just a measure of whether we are really democratic or whether we are feudal. And the truth of the matter is that, like Churchill said, yes, there are other forms of government. But please, let's not forget why democracy became so important. Democracy was not supposed to make us so comfortable and happy. There is no correlation between democracy and physical infrastructure. The beauty of democracy is that it allows the mind. It opens up frontiers for imagination, and that I can dream. And this is the beautiful thing about America. Obama suggests and shows us very clearly that you can dream. Of course, nobody expects that there will be another black president very soon. But the very fact that it didn't happen at all. So the beauty of democracy is the possibilities that lies ahead.
Daily, Africans are waking up to the reality and need to hold their leaders accountable. In 2019, Nigeria and 7 other African countries are holding general elections. There's no doubt these polls will serve as a critical test to measure how well the continent has fared in its democratic existence. Oyin Adekunle, TV360, Nigeria.
Moving on, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has conducted a referendum to decide whether or not to suspend its 3-month strike. The national leaders of the union had directed its zonal coordinators to meet and conduct the referendum across the nation to decide on the office of the president. According to reports, more than 200 members of the University of Ibadan chapter who attended the Congress allegedly voted for the continuation of the strike, while a little above 50 voted for the suspension of the industrial action. The chairman of the University of Ibadan chapter, Deji Omole, says that the Congress only conducted a referendum on what the federal government had offered the union to call off the strike. Omole stated that the FG promised to include the earned academic allowances in their 2019 salaries. Meanwhile, Nigeria's Senate leader Bukola Saraki has called on the federal government to resolve the ongoing Academic Staff Union of University strike without delay. According to the Senate spokesperson Yusuf Oladiyonu, Saraki highlighted the fact that the education of Nigeria's young people is being negatively affected by the stance of the government. Saraki says the action is also disenfranchising the youth, many of whom are registered to vote in their universities but are now stuck in their homes. The Senate leader also vowed that the lawmakers will provide support for both the union and the federal government when necessary. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is seeking a bench warrant against the former Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ayodele Oke, and his wife, Folashade Oke. Well, this is coming after their arraignment failed to hold again today, as the anti-graft agency said it is yet to serve the charges on the two defendants. While at the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos, the EFCC prosecutor Rotimi Oyedepo told the trial judge, Justice Chukwujeku Aneke, that since the commission is finding it difficult to secure the attendance of the two defendants in court, it intends to make an oral application for the issuance of a bench warrant for their arrest. The judge then adjourned the case to Thursday, February 7, for the EFCC to move its oral application seeking a bench warrant against Oke and his wife. Well, the Federal High Court in Lagos has fixed February 7 for the continuation of trial of the immediate past governor of Ekiti State, Ayodele Fayose, over alleged 6.9 billion naira fraud. The case was earlier fixed for Wednesday for continuation of cross-examination of the fifth prosecution witness, while on the next adjourned date, the prosecutor Rotimi Jacobs and the defense counsel Olalekan Ojo will address the court on the admissibility of an extrajudicial statement made by a party who is not standing trial. Fayose was arraigned by the commission, that is the EFCC, in October 22, 2018, alongside a company, Spotless Investment Limited, on 11 counts. Still on judicial matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has declared George Ogara as the authentic governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in Enugu State, disqualifying Ayogu Eze. Ogara had filed a case challenging the emergence of Ayogu Eze as the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress, alleging fraud. The judge presiding over the case, Justice Iyang Ekwo, on Tuesday ordered that Ogara's name be forwarded to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) as a duly nominated governorship candidate of the APC in the state. Justice Ekwo based his judgment on the fact that Ogara scored the highest vote cast in the 270 ward of the 17 local government areas of the state. Well, let's talk health now. The United Nations Children Fund UNICEF has revealed a new trend of female genital mutilation, FGM, which is said are mostly committed by grandmothers who come to nurse their children babies. The Chief of Field Office of UNICEF, Enugu Ibrahim Conte, emphasized the need for the government and other relevant agencies in the country to intensify the fight against female genital mutilation and cutting to avoid the dangers women face after the act. Conte made the appeal in Enugu at a sub-zonal media briefing organized by UNICEF in collaboration with Broadcasting Corporation of Abia State, BCA, in Umuahia. He says that Ebonyi and Imo states still have the highest prevalence rate of female genital mutilation in the southeast and charged the media to help in the fight against the harmful practice. Well, still on the ruling party, The women wing of the All Progressives Congress APC in Lagos has vowed to work assiduously for the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari at the February 16 elections. The chapter's women leader, Jumoke Okoya Thomas, made a pledge at a rally organized to mobilize support for APC candidates in the state. The APC governorship candidate in the state, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and his running mate, Obafemi Hamzat, were also among hundreds of party supporters present at the rally.
All of these women have been doing really great work, and this is just to thank them, to bring them together, that we are all one, to also encourage them that right in front of us is the task of ensuring at the end of the day those votes that represent this number of women are cast on the election day.
Meanwhile, the federal government has signed a memorandum of understanding for the domestication of production of Nigeria's international passports. The agreement was signed between Iris Smart Technology Limited, an indigenous company, and Nigerian Security Printing and Minting PLC at the Ministry of Interior in Abuja. The domestication entails that production of e-passports will be done in Nigeria alone and will no longer be done by foreigners. Speaking at the ceremony, Minister of Interior Abdurrahman Dambazao said that the process that led to the signing of the MOU began 2 years ago. He explained that before the agreement, passport booklets were produced outside the country. Cape Verde First Lady Ligia Fonseca has received the 2019 Dususu Award. The Dream Up, Speak Up and Stand Up project is an initiative founded by 17-year-old Zuriel Oduwole to ensure every girl child in Africa has access to quality education. The project seeks to ensure an African education development, particularly among the girl child. Adesha Odushoga tells us more.
There is a popular saying, when you educate a boy child, you educate an individual. But when you educate a girl child, you educate the whole nation. However, African cultures have had to confine the girl child to house chores and cooking in respect to a belief that a kitchen is a final office. As a result, many organizations have been engaged in different projects to stop this common tradition. One of them is the Dream Up, Speak Up, Stand Up project, otherwise known as Dususu, founded by 17-year-old Nigerian Zuriel Oduwole. The project awards first ladies across the world based on the successful support towards the girl child education. At the presentation of the 2019 Dususu Award, Oduwole explains the brain behind the project.
The first thing that I do is I speak to girls who are already in school about why it's so important to stay in school. So that way when they get older, they'll have a lot more opportunities in life. So for that part of my program, I've spoken to just over 26,000 youths in 14 countries. So places like Nigeria, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Kenya. And then alongside of that, I realized that if I want to see real change done, I have to talk to people who are in charge of the policies in the country. So I started meeting with presidents and prime ministers and speaking to them to try and find ways to get the girls in their countries into schools. So I've met with now 28 heads of state for that part of my project. So I've met the presidents of South Sudan, the presidents of Liberia, the presidents of Mauritius, and of course, president of the lovely country, Cabo Verde. But I realized that presidents aren't the only ones who can make a difference in their countries, but there's other people within the country who can as well. So what happened was in 2014, as part of my education project, I started the Dususu Awards. And the Dususu Awards basically recognizes an African First Lady and an African Gender Minister who are doing a lot in the areas of girls' education and also gender development.
The award recipient Ligia Fonseca, the First Lady of Cape Verde, expresses gratitude and vows to improve girl-child education in our country.
Everybody knows that educating a girl is educating a family, a community, but in Cabo Verde, this is real. We know that every girl that stands in schools will be better for her, for family, and for our country.
The Disusu Award also recognized cabinet ministers who encourage educational development of the girl child, as well as recognize the development of gender-based issues across the African continent. Adeshawa Udushoga, TV360, Nigeria.
Well, we have more stories for you coming up after this break. Don't go away.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those their silly lies.
Wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the Go-To app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other Paper Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
Well, let's now talk business. Oyin Adekunle is standing by. Hello, Oyin.
Hi, Fidelia.
So what do you have for us?
President Muhammadu Buhari has signed to the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act for 2019. The act establishes the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission as well as the Consumer Protection Tribunal to try violations. In a statement, Presidential Liaison Officer to the Senate, Ita Enang, explained that on implementation, the bill will ensure the promotion of economic efficiency, maintain competitiveness in the Nigerian market, and protect the welfare of consumers. This act has now been remitted to the National Assembly for implementation. The Naira appreciated to 362.19 per dollar in the investors and exporters window, buoyed by 96% increase in volume of dollars traded in the window. According to data from FMDQ, the exchange rate for the window dropped for the second consecutive day this week to 362.19 Naira per dollar on Tuesday from 362.58 Naira per dollar on Monday, translating to 39 kobo appreciation of the Naira. The volume of dollars traded rose to $441.38 million on Tuesday from 225 million Naira on Monday, indicating 96% increase. This follows the automation of Bureau de Change operations through the launch of its automation portal designed to boost transparency in the foreign exchange market. Crude oil production by the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, NPDC, has increased by 57,000 barrels per day from 108,000 barrels per day in 2016 to 165,000 barrels per day in 2017. NNPC GMD Maikanti Barrow, who revealed this in Abuja, said the figure represents 52.7% growth in crude production by the oil company. Barrow said NPDC had been a key contribution to the consistent year-to-year national crude oil production growth, which had seen a steady rise from an average of 1.2 million barrels of oil per day in 2016 to 1.86 million barrels per day in 2017 and 2.06 million barrels per day in 2018. He also noted that with the development, the NNPC was now well on its way to meeting the 500,000 barrels per day target by 2020. Our stock market report is up next right after this break. Please stay tuned. The NSE once again closed in the positive territory with key market indicators climbing by 0.16%. Now that's a boost of 48 points in the all-share index and an 18 billion naira gain in the market's capitalization. It was a good day for the consumer sector, which saw a 1.25% growth, earning its two slots on the top gainers chart. That's for Nestle, and also we see and flour mills. Actually, the value of Nestle is appreciating by 40 naira, the highest since the start of trading this year, and this is after its share price fell to a low of 1,420 naira. Flour mill, on the other hand, saw a mild boost of 45 kobo, which pushed its value up to 19 naira per share. Now, on the flip side, Dangote Cement is leading the pack of losers, recording a second day loss, this time falling by 1.5 naira. The value of the company has been dropping since the resignation of its independent non-executive director in person of Olusegun Olusonya on February 4th. And Dangote is actually not the only loser on the industrial goods sector. We see that it was also a bad day for WAPCO, and which saw a 25 kobo drop in its share price. The dominance of the financial service industry on the top traders chart is broken by Japan Oil, which comes in third on the chart, and that's with over 36 million shares worth of 7 billion naira. Now, pardon me, top traders, over 36 million shares worth over 7 billion naira were traded today, and these four equities here make up over 50% of the entire value of share traded, which comes in at 4.828 billion naira. On the global scale, we'll see that Nikkei's shares today has the same fate as the NSE, closing with a 0.14% rise in its all-share index, and this follows an extended rally on Wall Street, actually. The bears, however, dominated trading at the FTSE and Dow Jones, with both of them closing with losses today. That's all on the stock market report. It's over to you, Fidelia.
Well, thank you, Oni, so much for that update. We will take a short break now and return with news from the foreign and sports scene. Don't go away.
Corruption not in my country.
Hello? Yeah, I found your wallet in front of a supermarket. Meet me at Apple Junction. Yes, I'll be waiting for you.
Now we find out. Two of us.
Thank you very much, officer. You know, it's surprising that men like you still exist in the police force.
Yes, so...
Oh, yes.
This is just a token of my appreciation.
Oh, no, you don't need to do this. We are only doing our job.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Now I know police is really my friend.
Yes.
Friend. Hey. Which came out with this one? I don't understand.
You know your problem. You are greedy. I'm a policeman who is doing his job. All forms of corruption in the force. Not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. Well, London has been selected as the meeting place for the next summit of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. NATO Secretary General John Stoltenberg on Wednesday announced at the meeting, which will take place later in December. He said it will be an opportunity for allied heads of state and government to address the security challenges they face now and in the future. The announcement comes at the heels of the organization's 70th year anniversary, and as Macedonia makes a key step in joining NATO by signing the Accession Protocol document after Greece blocked the country's attempt to join for more than a decade over name disputes. And to sports, FIFA President Gianni Infantino is set to serve a second term after World Football Governing Body announced that he would be the only candidate for June's vote. The 48-year-old has been in charge of FIFA since February 2016 after succeeding the disgraced Sepp Blatter following the corruption scandal which rocked the organization. The World Football Governing Body says only Infantino had the required nomination letters from 5 of the 211 member federations when the deadline passed at midnight on Tuesday in Zurich. Well, one of his many achievements is the expansion of the World Cup to 48 teams in 2026 and picking the United States, Canada and Mexico to host it. The election will take place on June 5 in Paris ahead of the Women's World Cup. Well, that's all we have for you on this bulletin on News Now. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I am Fidelia Aguncha. Bye for now.